It's so easy to be average. It takes a little something to be special, doesn't it? It takes a little something special to be a great player. Did you push yourself to be great today?
There wasn't a first down. Not that much. The officiating, I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today. That spot, the graphic displays the unfair penalties. The one not called on us on that Barrett clearly was being booked before the ball got there. And the previous penalty they called on Delano Hill, the ball is uncatchable and by the receiver. See, I'm bitterly disappointed. At least throw a hat, when you stick, when you're silent, that's a penalty.
This is the Silver Bullets Podcast on the Ozone Radio Network, your authority on all things Ohio State. Here are your hosts, Shannon, Sommers, and Chip Minnich.
Not Chip, if you have an iota of human feeling.
Buckeye Nation, welcome to another edition of the Silver Bullets Podcast on the Ozone Radio Network. I'm your host, Shannon Sommers. Today we're going to be talking about the Ohio State football team, which means I have my man Chip Minnich here. Chip, how are we doing today?
Great, Shannon. It's great to be with you on this blustery spring evening.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, we've got opening day that is tomorrow, but when you guys are listening to this probably, and I'm getting a little bit scared. Getting scared that I might be standing in line again and they cancel it beforehand. And I don't know if you've seen this sandwich that they've come up with that's got flaming hot Cheetos on it, that I'm going to eat it and then I'm going to give a review on it. Plus, I'm going to hopefully be able to see the Ohio State spring marching band over there at the Progressive Field doing Hang On Sloopy and some other stuff for the home opener, which would be very nice to enjoy if it was a warm day, but it looks like we're not going to get that.
I think it's going to seem a little bit more comparable to Ohio State against that team up north rather than a spring baseball event. But who's to say, anytime you can have an adventurous sandwich, that contains flaming hot Cheetos, that I think that makes it worthwhile going out to the ballpark, no matter what the outcome is.
I guess the sandwich has like pulled pork and green apple slaw and the flaming hot Cheetos. It sounds interesting, so I definitely got to give it a try.
Speaking I think Tony Gerdeman get his review of it. I'm willing to bet that he wouldn't even take one bite, let alone like eat the entire thing.
Well, in all actuality, when I first seen it, I sent it to the DM with him and Tom, and we're talking about the stuff for Acosta Field, and Tony says, well, it looks like I'm going to be able to try that at the spring game. I'm like, wait a minute. It's not going to be in Ohio Stadium. It's at Progressive Field. He says, I always travel with the Flaming Hot Cheetos, and we'll have city barbecue for lunch, so I'm going to try it then.
Even with the slaw, though?
Well, he won't have the slaw. He just,
Okay.
He just going to try to, but it's probably going to be plain Jane. So it can't have any kind of, I'm not going to say the mayo word out loud that much because he might block me again on Twitter and, all that kind of good stuff.
Okay. All right.
But speaking of certain things, before we get into a lot of stuff, last week on the show and on Acosta Field, I gave out some incorrect information. I mean, it didn't really change my mind on some things, but when I was talking about Dwayne Haskins in the Illinois game, I had some things in my head mixed up. For some reason, I was thinking the Illinois game was the pick six, and it was the UNLV game. So I totally had that screwed up. And I thought that's why, I don't know why I had that messed up in my head. Just so many things going on. I think it was 3 days before the UNLV game, my mom passed away, and then now dealing with the stuff with my mother-in-law, my own health. Things are a little bit crazy, so things get mixed up. So I apologize for putting out the wrong information. And thanks for those that reached out and, commented and everything. I'm glad that you guys did and hold my feet to the fire and want to have this, correct information out there. So I definitely appreciate it. I'm still not going to back off me personally thinking that Burrow is going to be the starting quarterback, and I'm the chairman of the Joey Burrow for quarterback club.
Well, there you go. I mean, I know we always talk about, how fans can reach me or you at the end of the podcast that we do. Just a little teaser, I guess, if you want to think of it. I've been writing position overviews of, for the 2018 Ohio State Buckeyes, and this coming Friday will be the latest article, position overview, and when you know it, that the quarterbacks are the next position that I reviewed, and I did reference how you are kind of, definitely like at the forefront of people who believe that Joe Burrow should be and could be the starting quarterback for Ohio State in 2018, and I kind of give a lot of reasons why I have quarterback as a position of concern going into the 2018 season. Not necessarily anything against Joe Burrow, nothing against Wayne Haskins or Tate Martell for that matter, but more of a philosophical perspective as to what I remember Urban Meyer when what he has done as a head coach, not even so much even at Ohio State, but just throughout his career, what he has done at the quarterback positions with players who have mobility and those who do not. So I would really appreciate any and all of our listeners looking at that article and giving me feedback positively or negatively.
Definitely worth checking out. And one of the things that when I look at the quarterback position and, you say that there's, I don't want to say trepidation, but, there's some concern. To me, no matter who the quarterback is, the one thing that is untested in all three of them is we don't know what kind of consistency we're going to get from these guys. You don't know what you're going to get from week to week to week. Is, say, a Joe Burrow going to come in and be able to play, I think what they have, Tulsa this year? Is it Tulsa? I can't remember off the top of my head. Is it going to be the same, or Tulane, I think it is. Is he going to play the same against like Tulane that he's going to play against like TCU? The same thing if Haskins is a starter. Are they going to be able to be up or are they going to just have in the back of their mind, it's Tulane, we don't have to play as tough. I don't have to give it 100% like I do against TCU, or will they play tight because they're amped up and they're, the defense is a little bit more challenging and stuff like that. I think those are a lot of questions that no matter who the starter is going to be, that we're going to have to keep an eye. I mean, it's going to be a big issue going forward because you don't know what you're going to. At least with JT Barrett, you knew he was going to be level. And, I mean, except for the Iowa game, whatever the heck that was. But I mean, if you needed that 1 yard, he got you that 1 yard. But you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I completely see what you're saying. And for Ohio State fans who may not be entirely acquainted with the 2018 schedule, let's face it, the very first game against Oregon State, you're going to be favored. Ohio State is going to be favored, 28 points. I'm horrible when it comes to gambling lines, so don't quote me on this, but I would expect, a 28-point spread the very next week. Rutgers, I would think something comparable. You really don't know what you have. And then the next, right, you're going on the road. You're at, you're not at TCU, but you're, in, Jerry Jones Stadium. You're at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium playing at TCU in a quote unquote neutral site game. Let's be honest. That is going to be a home game for better or for worse. for TCU. And I know Ohio State fans travel well, but what do you really know? What you have at the starting quarterback position, regardless of who it is. When you're going up against the TCU team, Gary Patterson is probably one of the most underrated coaches at the major college level. Defensively has kind of made his reputation. It's gonna be a difficult thing. And then you reference the Tulane game. You come back, catch your breath. No matter how well or how poorly you played against TCU, and then by the way, at the end of September, you get to go to Happy Valley at Penn State, and you and I both know, even though the network schedule hasn't come out, that's going to be a night game. That's the kind of game where you literally, no matter what your experience level is, that's always such a tough place to play. So it's going to be interesting to see, no matter who the quarterback is, how quickly and rapidly they adapt to the pressures that come with being the starting quarterback at Ohio State.
Yeah, that game's definitely going to be a night game. And you have to look at the last year, it wasn't a night game at the Shoe based on the World Series was going on. So that's the only reason. I mean, I think there was a top 10 SEC game on at the same time that was 12 or 3:30 time frame also. So they didn't get the night game either. So I just, being in late September, it's not going to have to worry about the World Series. So yeah, this definitely going to be a night game. Wish it was at the Shoe this year, but you got to, alternate every other year, which is fine. But, yeah, I mean, you look at a lot of things with this team, and this week, I think, the media got to meet with the linebacker coaches and the linebackers and stuff. Found out about, Tough Borland. He's looking like he's going to be out till September. I mean, does that mean he can't practice till September? I was thinking maybe he's going to be, doing some light practicing in, training camp, possibly. I'm not sure. But then you had, Urban Meyer said at his press conference that Barrett Browning, he tested out, I guess, what they said, a champion for the scrimmage on Saturday. I think it was it Malik Harris?
Malik Harrison
was, he was, honorable mention, I think. No, it was Justin Hilliard. Justin Hilliard was an honorable mention. I think they moved Justin Hilliard and Barrett Browning were battling basically for the middle linebacker, and they moved Justin to the outside. Barron's played some on the outside, and just listening to the interview with Bill Davis, and he was saying, a lot of the guys, the outside guys are interchangeable. A lot of the guys are getting experience and reps on the outside, and the Mike is the main one as far as having more consistency, and he's going to have him, and then you're going to have, what's his name when he comes back from injury?
Tough Borland.
And then the kid that's going to be coming in, Trajan Maheda, whatever, the freshman that's going to be.
Taraja Mitchell. Yeah.
I'm so good with names here, folks. But, yeah, it's just the theme that seems to be going on with the linebackers, the cornerbacks, the safeties, the offensive line, the rotation that we had on the defensive line. Ohio State has got a lot of depth built in to where, and it's good depth. It's, where a player A can take a play or two or a series off, and you're not losing anything talent-wise. And you have all these guys that are getting reps and getting experience, learning all these different positions, and they want everybody to learn everybody else's position. How much of an advantage is this going to be for Ohio State come during the fall camp and next year?
Oh, I've written about this before for not only the Ozone, but for Athlon Sports, is that I think, Big Ten coaches, when they, by and large, when they kind of hear about Ohio State with their quote unquote problem, okay, Tough Borland is out with an Achilles injury until September. By the way, we're going to, supplement the middle linebacker position with Justin Hilliard, who was a 5-star recruit from several years ago. Oh, if he's not up to it, Baron Browning, possibly another 5-star recruit, can play the middle linebacker position. So, in other words, the depth of talent that Ohio State has accumulated, not just in this past winter with the recruiting class, but in previous. I mean, it dwarfs everything across not just the Big Ten East, but the entire Big Ten. Like when you think about as you said, in terms of fall camp, you always read about unfortunate injuries that take place at other schools, and you'll see it on the Big Ten Network or ESPN or across the internet. Like how is school X going to fill in the injury to player X at this position? In a place like Ohio State, it truly is kind of next man up, and quite commonly it's not that the player the next man up is lacking talent, it's just that they're lacking experience. So the fact that they have so much depth, as you said, across the board, yes, they're tremendously inexperienced, but it's during the spring, the advantage of being able to take advantage of mixing and matching different players, trying to get an idea as to their true strengths and weaknesses, and getting a feel for and developing chemistry at some of those different positions is a luxury that most Big Ten teams do not have.
Now, last year, Wisconsin, they started off the season, one of their linebackers, he's out for the year. I think the first week of the season, they lost another linebacker, and they kept trucking along. And you're able to do that if you have the right system in place and the right players. And that's something that Wisconsin's been good at, doing, is building up what they have. And I don't remember being a fan of Ohio State football and remember having a team that is as stacked as this team is, that has the depth that this team has. And it's kind of insane to me.
Well, I think challenge. I'm just speculating here as more of a fan, but I would think the big challenge that the Ohio State coaching staff has is you're always going out and recruiting, as Urban Meyer would probably admit, let's just say, like the 20 to 25 best players in the country. And kind of, what you're telling these guys is, we think you're good enough to come in and play at Ohio State, if not necessarily start, but to play. So the players that are on the roster know, hey, by and large, the coaching staff, they're trying to get players that are just as good, if not better, than I am. So it is a continual challenge psychologically to everyone on the roster that you have to produce when your opportunity presents itself. And I would also think that the challenge for the coaching staff is, I guess that, all right, you have to continually rotate those players because by and large, at the end of the spring, for example, a lot of these players are going to kind of look at the depth chart and see where they are and where they stack up and think to themselves, all right, I've been competing, I've been doing my best, but something, I'm not getting anywhere. I can go to another school and play, or is it worth sticking out here and competing, and possibly just getting occasional spot duty? I mean, it's a nice problem to have, like I said a few moments ago.
Speaking of the spring practices and stuff and the information that we get out of there, you wrote a question for Across the Field that was answered, and I'm not going to give you the answer. It's going to be on Friday's show.
Okay.
But, we want to talk about it. So I want to get your opinion on, your question was, which player are you surprised has not been mentioned more by Urban Meyer this spring? I'll go ahead and get, who's on your list.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to give you on the offensive side of the ball, and I don't want to put too much pressure on this young man because he was a freshman last year who redshirted, and for all I know, he could be making a move up the depth chart, and without seeing practice, without being involved in terms of because I believe at this position group everything is still kind of in a state of flux. But a name that I haven't heard a lot about or from so far in terms of social media, in terms of some of the podcasts like Acosta Field from Gerd and from Tom who get to see practice, is Wyatt Davis. He's an offensive lineman from California, came in highly touted, 5-star. I was just talking about, and we're talking along the offensive line where there's kind of a lot of, all right, well, like for example, like left tackle Isaiah Prince is going to start. The center position looks like it's going to be Brady Taylor, but that's still not declared yet. Thayer Munford looks like he's got the right tackle. So that means, by and large, like Michael Jordan, he's out at left guard. But that right guard position, the idea of like, okay, like Demetrius Knox, is it going to be Brandon Bowen? Is, who's gonna claim that right guard spot? I haven't heard a lot of Wyatt Davis, and I'm not. Maybe Wyatt Davis is actually moving up the depth chart as we're recording this, but I'm just kind of surprised to have not heard his name mentioned a little bit more prominently this spring, for as highly touted as he was coming out of high school a little over a year ago.
That's pretty interesting. What about on defense?
Well, on defense, I mean, we're talking about on the defensive side, like the linebackers. That's kind of, like that's all up in the air in terms of, like they're kind of mixing and matching. We talked about the tremendous depth defensively. I'm going to throw out a name on the defensive side. He's been mentioned a little bit, but I haven't heard more of him, and that is Amir Reep. He was moved from corner to safety. Right now, like the only starter at the safety position is Jordan Fuller. I realize that Isaiah Pryor is the presumed favorite to win the other safety position, but I haven't heard a lot more of Amir Reep so far at the safety position. So those are the two guys, and this is I want to emphasize for anyone who may know either of those players, for anyone who possibly in terms of family members, that is not meant in a disparaging way. It's just I'm just kind of surprised I haven't heard more about either of those players, Wyatt Davis and Amir Reep so far this spring.
Pretty interesting. I'll let you know that they only mentioned one person and they didn't go offense and defense, but I think that when you hear it, you'll enjoy who it is. So just leave that suspense there for you. I don't want to give it away or give it away for our listeners. But see, Brandon Zimmerman, he tweeted out an article this morning about former Buckeye defensive lineman Darius Slade. You wanted to talk about that a little bit. I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, I thought my props to Brandon for tweeting this out. He's out in that neck of the woods. Darius Slade, for those Ohio State fans, if that name sounds familiar, he was a defensive end who signed literally on the last day, on National Signing Day in 2014. And kind of the story to Darius Slade was he was originally verbally committed to I believe it was Nebraska, and then later on he had switched his verbal commitment to Michigan State, and he is cousins with former Penn State defensive lineman Jared Odrick, who Jared Odrick played at Penn State under current Ohio State defensive line coach Larry Johnson. And as soon as Larry Johnson took the job with Ohio State, Darius Slade decided, something, I want to play for Coach Johnson, came to Ohio State, redshirted in 2014, played sparingly in 2015, and then I believe he suffered, it might have been an Achilles injury. I can't recall. In 2016, was out the entire year, and the opportunity presented itself for better playing time out in Arizona State. It's a tremendous article about, it seems like he's doing very, very well. Wish him nothing but the best. A lot of great quotes in there from Larry Johnson about everything that he saw in Darius Slade. So highly recommend, for those of you who follow me on Twitter, look it up on my timeline. Like I said, I retweeted it out earlier today, but it's great news about a former Buckeye who is seemingly making tremendous strides in his college football career out in Arizona State.
I'll put the link in our show notes too, so that way people can find it there. And it is a really good story. What are some other things you wanted to discuss?
Another great article I saw today about former Ohio State running back, Heisman Trophy winner Eddie George. And that was Eddie George is, his playing career has long since ended. And talked about in the article that I retweeted about he is currently helping to teach a class, a business class, I believe at Ohio State, about, the management of money. He is working with a professor. The gist of the story was about how Eddie George, when he was a rookie 20 years ago in the NFL, playing for the then Tennessee Oilers and, eventually the Tennessee Titans, but how he was almost conned out of money because he really didn't know about money management, financial management. It was not something that, you think about, as a fan, you think like, why do these guys go through their money so quickly and so foolishly? And Eddie George, in this article, he basically said, it was kind of, he would talk to players that he was on teams with about, well, who do you have manage your money? And I think the way that Eddie George referred to it is, it was, okay, well, this guy manages my money, but it was more of like the blind leading the blind. Wasn't these guys necessarily didn't care about their money, but they just had never been properly trained or educated about it. So it's a great thing to read about how Eddie George now, he kind of, in his post NFL career is kind of taking it on, as he refers to it, as kind of a service opportunity to educate others about money management, how much he's truly enjoyed this, post NFL career, being able to kind of talk about some of the different things that he's learned through the years as an ex-athlete, some of the other things he's doing. He actually, I think in the article, I believe it referenced how he obtained his MBA from Northwestern. Some of the different things he's done. He's played the part of Billy Flynn, which is a prominent role in the musical Chicago. Some of the different things that Eddie George has done. And what I thought was very interesting is, one of the students in the class said, like, he was born after Eddie George's playing career, so kind of makes me feel old. But this, like some of these students here, like they can look at him and truly, listen to not only his wisdom and experience, but they don't look at him in the same way that maybe like you or I would, like remembering him as a player to talk about their experiences and the importance of being wise in terms of fiscal management.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And a lot of things that it's nice to see him being able to give back as far as the knowledge and everything. And it's nice to see with Ohio State, with like the real life Wednesdays and all the tools that it seems like Urban Meyer and the Ohio State athletic department is trying to give all these players the tools in order to be successful, so that way they don't end up hopefully broke or, something devastating or whatever, that they're just down and out at some point in time. All right, was there anything else we had for today?
Yeah, I guess the last thing in terms of like a retweeted article from my timeline, this was courtesy of SB Nation, was an article about J.T. Barrett. And right now, J.T. Barrett, like so many other Ohio State players who either declared for the NFL draft or are eligible for the NFL draft, in terms of their preparation. Basically, the article is about, kind of I don't want to say the long odds that J.T. Barrett has, but, talking about how J.T. Barrett, as Ohio State fans will either acknowledge or grudgingly acknowledge, all the intangibles that J.T. Barrett possessed as a quarterback at Ohio State, how a lot of that is not really necessarily helping him in terms of his preparation for a possible NFL career. Like all of the critique of J.T. Barrett as a passer, his, the ability to throw deep passes, his accuracy issues. Those are things that are being picked over by NFL scouts, but so many people are discounting the fact, his poise under pressure, his intangibles, and will J.T. Barrett get picked in the NFL draft in a little over 3 weeks? Who's to say? But I wouldn't pick against him. I definitely think he would be worthy of a late round NFL draft selection, simply because of all those intangibles I just mentioned. And we'll see. But I thought it was a worthwhile article, and like I said, it was on my timeline. Definitely think it would be worthwhile reading for anyone who has been a fan of J.T. Barrett up to this point.
He definitely, in my eyes, after watching him for the last 4 years, to be a better quarterback than what Johnny Football was. And to see that meltdown and him still going at it today and on the Dan Patrick show and doing all the stupid stuff he does, it's mind-boggling how you have players like that might actually get a shot at a second chance in the league. And then you have others that are winners and leaders. And, it boggles my mind.
I agree.
All right. Well, with that being said, we'll go ahead and wrap up this show. Next week, we'll do a preview looking into what we want to see from the spring game, what we're looking forward to, stuff like that. And hopefully maybe a little bit of a weather update, have a review of the flaming hot Cheeto sandwich.
There you go. Yeah. Let's hope for good weather. Looking forward to going to the spring game. I hope a lot of our listeners are doing the same. It's always, say what you will, you're not going to see, the end all be all in terms of, what you will see, on the field in terms of, in 2018. I think, I agree with what Gerd and Tom and you have said on, Acosta Field, about, the spring game. If you're truly anticipating seeing, a lot of, noteworthy plays, yeah, you're going to be disappointed. I certainly agree with, I think it was Gerd, who said how he missed, how the players, under former Ohio State head coach Jim Tressel, when they would have a player draft, missing out on, who the players thought were, kind of like the best players, so to speak. Because I do recall, Troy Smith being the number one draft choice. I do recall Chris Wells being the number one draft choice. I don't remember the AJ Trapasso being the number one draft choice, but I'm not getting Gerd in terms of his memories. But that being said, to me, going to see, as Tom and Gerd have stated, players who have redshirted. I mentioned Wyatt Davis earlier. I never got a chance to see him play. Maybe he'll turn some heads. See Tate Martell, see some of the other, some of the players who weren't necessarily redshirted but didn't play prominently in 2017, like Jalen Harris, who has kind of been turning some heads. So the spring game, to me, for a football purist like myself, it's just kind of like that oasis between, the end of the previous season until September. It just kind of gives me an opportunity to kind of, something to look forward to for the upcoming season.
Yeah, there's a lot of things as far as just being able to see some players you haven't seen before, and just hopefully being able to be out, enjoy some nice weather, and just enjoy being at the shoe and enjoy being around other Buckeye fans and stuff like that. I don't know where I'm going to be working at this year. Last year they had me under the south stands, and I didn't get to watch any of the game, so I'm not counting on watching any of the game until afterwards. I'll rewatch it on TV or whatnot, but I just hopefully go and have a good time and meet a lot of fans and, have some fun and maybe catch a peek here or there. But, yeah. All right. Well, with that being said, that's going to do it for this edition of the Silver Bullets podcast on the Ozone Radio Network. Chip, where can folks find you at again?
On Twitter at Chip Minnich. My last name is spelled Minich. I'm like Shannon. I'm a contributor to the ozone.net on our Hazen Cannon section. Like I said, I've been writing a series of articles about kind of spring overview, different positions of concern. I have an article coming out about the quarterbacks that'll be this coming Friday. Let me know what you think. Am I completely far-fetched? Am I on the money in terms of my concerns? You're not going to hurt my feelings. If anything, I truly value the give and take that we have with our fans. And I also contribute to Athlon Sports. So, like I said, you can find those things on Twitter at Chip Minnich, as well as on the Ozone Net section of Hazen Cannon.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Joe for taking the time out and leaving a comment on our podcast on the Ozone page. It just, even if we don't agree on something, and he pointed out that I was wrong, but taking the time out and, just commenting meant a lot. So I appreciate that and want to say thank you again. And you can find me on Twitter at ShannonCFB. And don't forget, you could listen to our other shows on the Ozone Radio Network. We've got the Buckeye Sloopcast. I see you guys. And with Jared and Kyle, we're gonna have to sit down and have a discussion about this war on Shannon, Chip. We got Costa Field with Tony and Tom.
I don't even know
what's that?
I don't even know what provoked that whole thing.
All right, here's how it all went.
I'm just still kind of at a mystery.
Let me throw out this last podcast of Sons of Schmidt with Brandon Zimmerman, Mike Meals, and Michael Citro. All right, so on one of the episodes of Costa Field, Tom said, we Buckeye Sloopcast has a tagline when they open their show. It's that you guys got barbecue back there, and it's based off of the Denzel Ward hit that Gus Johnson called that Ward got thrown out of. He got hit with targeting or whatever in that game, and they came back and said it wasn't targeting. So it's a good line. So I just made a comment of, well, it wasn't original, so they lose points on it. So now, they think I'm kind of dishing on their show, and so it's just one of them things, so.
It could be worse. Like, it's not like you're calling out somebody for, wearing their spelling bee best or something like that.
Well, I guess when you have a hobo living on your couch, like I do.
Here we go. And I have to watch my words. I guess I've just been recently declared out of purgatory.
Yes,
so.
you've been reinstated back into the good grace. Oh, sometimes it's a lot of fun. That's the one thing I like about all of us is we can all have fun together, and everybody gets along and does a great job, and has a bunch of great shows and stuff like that out there. All right, well, that'll do it for this episode. And if you can, if you could take the time out, leave us a review on iTunes, it'd be greatly appreciated. And go Bucks.
Go Bucks.